Hello again, everyone. And this will be a part two to our previous discussion with our group regarding the video that we had watched. That was really a dismantling and unprovoked attack on a young man by a group of women. And hopefully, I'll put again the video in the description, but hopefully before watching this, you'll have a chance to watch that video so that you'll know what we're talking about. But right now, I want to hear from a different perspective. I've got Tim Goldich with me, and Tim is definitely a veteran in the men's movement, and also the primary spokesperson, I believe, for the equalist movement, the gender equalist movement specifically. And so I think, Tim, what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is just turn the floor over to you and give us your perspective.
Yeah, okay. So thanks Taz. And all right, so with that video, one of the things I like to say is that in the realms of gender conflict and complaint and gender activism and advocacy, gender ideology, gender defining, gender issues, gender studies, gender politics, gender anything, there is feminism on the one hand, and on the other hand, there is nothing. And that's what I see this poor young man enduring. He's surrounded by the feminine energy, feminine perspective. And unfortunately, the feminine puts the sisterhood first, above truth, above honesty, above empathy, above fairness. And what the women are doing is they're demanding that even this very quite young man up, take full responsibility, honor his mother's perspective, and put all the blame on himself. It's pretty harrowing. I mean, it's very emblematic of what men are going through. You know, there's a female perspective, and then there's nothing. These men really don't know their own perspective. They don't even know they've got a perspective. They don't know that they've got a point of view that differs from a female point of view, and yet is valid. And I'm not saying that men should lose their empathy for the female perspective. I'm just saying that men should not lose their own perspective. And this young man is attempting to have a perspective. He's struggling to have a point of view, and he's getting knocked down like a bowling pin. It's very emblematic of why men do not speak up around these issues. They're just going to be besieged by an ocean of women, every one of them having the equivalent of a PhD in their own feminine perspectives on anything to do with gender reality. While the male, unless he's like us, you know, unless he's studied these issues at length, he doesn't stand a chance. He doesn't know his own perspective. There's no way he can argue with women in these matters. He just doesn't know what to say. And so he doesn't say anything. He just kind of hides behind his newspaper, as it were. And that video also contained the light at the end of the tunnel. That woman was remarkable. She's a born gender equalist. Gender equalism is really all about calling it even, and doing so by understanding that men are more respected, but they're less loved, and women are more loved, but they're less respected. And there's a balance to that. It's not a good balance, but it's not a world of male power and female victimization. That's just half of gender reality presented and demanded to be accepted as if it were gender reality in its entirety, but it's not. And this woman really represents the other half of gender reality. This woman's all about loving men enough to have empathy for men and respecting women enough to have to hold women accountable. She's not going to infantilize women to say that whatever they do is good enough. No, she has high standards for women, and the women in the video fall far short of what she would have women be. But that comes out of respect for women. She nails it so perfectly. There's no empathy for this young man. He's respected in the sense that he's expected to man up and take full responsibility. He's expected to be the adult in the scenario, even if he's only 20 years old or whatever. Even when he was just 13, he is the man around the house. And but there's a lack of love, a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion. He gets accountability without compassion, which is ruthless. Meanwhile, his female equivalent gets compassion without accountability, which is infantilizing. But yeah, I applaud that young man for at least trying to break out of the box that he's been put in, and I very much applaud that woman commentator. She just saw it all so clearly, and there's hope in that. There's hope in it because she proves that women are completely capable of being autonomous adults and taking responsibility. And that's a woman that would, she would balk at compassion without accountability. She would know that was infantilized and she'd reject it. I wish she were not so seemingly rare out there, but she demonstrates that such women do exist, and that these are the women that men can both love and respect. That's a woman that you could trust.
Yeah.
That's a woman you could marry.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. And thanks, Tim. That that woman is another example, of the ones that when you watch what she says and how she says it and to whom she says it, this is somebody that, as you say, you can trust because they balance their outrage with common sense.
Yeah.
And an appeal to reason and accountability and compassion. As you say, all the things that anyone is fully capable of balancing out in their own head, and in their own behavior anytime they want to. It really is a matter of wanting to. People in general do whatever it is they do by, lack of a better term, the carrot and the stick. I mean, they pursue the carrot and they avoid the stick. And, I'm sure in her own life, that's the way it's been. She got where she is just because, there's things that she puts a value on for a good reason that she goes after. And there are things that, that offend and revolt her. And, she wants them away from her. And I don't know any like well-rounded individuals that don't behave that way.
Right. Well, you see, she does not put the sisterhood above all things. She does not put the sisterhood over ethics. She does not put the sisterhood over empathy. She does not put the sisterhood above justice. She looks at the situation and she sees a young man being treated profoundly unfairly. And her heart breaks for this guy.
Right.
And, the path of least resistance for her would be to just join in with the rest of the women. And most of the men that would also take the position that this young man should man up and take full responsibility and don't talk back to your mother and don't be a victim and don't have vulnerable emotion.
Right.
Just be a man about it.
Yeah.
And do not question what your mother says, what the sisterhood says, what the feminine says. You just you have the power. Women are the victims, and that's it. And we're not going to hear anything else.
Yeah. And as I said, it in the cold light of day, what that woman was objecting to in the original video. Again, if I was an alien from another planet and I heard from her, I would say, yeah, that sounds right. I've got no dog in your fight, but that seems reasonable to me. But, in the really, I hate to say it, but, just toxically self-supporting and self-referencing rhetoric that was being thrown at this kid, none of that appeal to reason and compassion, none of it makes any sense in that world. As you say, it must necessarily be that the position of the sisterhood and the rightness of the feminine, and the invalidity of the masculine is, it takes primacy at any cost, because this is just the way it has to be. And to that, this woman and you and I say, actually it can be that way for a while. This, we are in the midst of that being, the way things are. It's just that we're never going to be able to hold it up. It's going to crush everyone.
Not sustainable.
Yeah,
because it's false.
Right.
Men are the power, women are the victims is grossly one-sided, which is why it's false, which is why it's poisonous, and it's not sustainable. It's not true.
Right. And the one woman there, I believe she was identified as a judge, the Caucasian lady, who was the worst of all. This is what replaces authority, like real authority and real leadership in the world that we're living in right now.
And that was the elderly woman. Right, who proudly proclaimed that she has no feeling at all for this young kid.
Right. And I'm like, that's the klaxon of doom. I mean, they're, like I said, nobody can hold that up. I just, again, some things work and some things don't.
Well, the old African proverb, if a young man is rejected enough, he will burn the whole village down to feel its warmth.
Right. And
and this poor kid, he gets no warmth. This older woman doesn't want to let him any kind of feeling at all.
No.
So, eventually he's very apt to act out. And then, of course, society will say, well, you see, it's proof. We told you men are no good. Right.
And, as I had said previously, if he hits the age of 40, right, and he's still with us.
Yeah, if he makes it.
The chances of him being honestly free and healed and, not under care or in a cage or in the ditch or in the gutter, are almost zero, right?
So it would seem. Yeah, I know. It's dreadful. I mean, I just can't imagine that kid just has nowhere to go.
No,
not just societally, but even psychically, he's got nowhere to go. He's got no advocates. He's got no allies. He doesn't even know his own point of view. He's being gaslighted in a dreadful way.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. What's he going to do?
Alternatively, in the world that ought to be, right? Just looking at him and listening to what he says and how he says it, right? Without all of this, okay, everyone has every reason to think he would be a perfectly viable, potential, successful, and productive young fella.
Right.
So what we're facing,
he speaks out of integrity. He speaks out of deep vulnerability, which speaks of great strength. Right, he's a very impressive young man.
Yeah, and what is everybody howling about the lack of these days?
Yeah, right.
And rightly so, because there's far too little. And like I said, there could be, but as long as things stay the way they are, there won't be.
Yeah, because we're basically seeing them being crushed right before our eyes.
Yeah, and what I had proposed in the last conversation is the idea that now that we, can resolve that this is reprehensible, unsustainable, dangerous, like really dangerous, and a potential, world ender. Now we do what, and what I was saying, and I'm kind of like you in this, that I get so far in this proposal, and pretty soon people get uncomfortable. But the kind of resources, and I mean money and effort and time and lack of a better word, accommodation, that it would take to really make this right and keep it that way. I mean, money alone, we're talking about Pentagon defense budget
Yeah.
kind of money, and over time, and not just the transfer of wealth, but also in the meantime, the cost in opportunity and productivity. We can't keep like millions of men like him in the harness pulling the plow while they're trying to heal up. Those two hold each other mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to hurt, man. It really is. I mean, I was telling him, back at the height of the Second World War, Americans and people in the UK and so forth were encouraged to plant victory gardens, and to support, the use of their ration cards. And they were making it, seem like a really rah positive thing. What they were trying to tell you is grow a victory garden and be careful with your ration card so you don't starve to death.
Uh-huh.
That's what they were actually saying.
Right.
And for this is the same kind of conversation. What it's going to take, right, to right this wrong and make it a sustainable, balanced outcome is going to take resources, the likes of which God has never seen before. And it's going to take that kind of time too. But it's either worth it or it's not. It's either we do that and bite the bullet and face that hard reality, or we watch it all burn. Door number 3 was taken away and it's not coming back.
Yeah. Well, geez. Well, from my gender equalist point of view, the healing and everything that's constructive and everything that really improves gender relations and gender reality would begin with woman and man calling it even and foregoing this incredibly destructive contest for the coveted title of MVP, most victimized and powerless.
Yeah.
And moving on to something much more constructive.
Right.
But it means that deep archetypes have to be foregone. You have to evolve out of this need, this seeming need that humans have to pour all their love upon women and all their respect upon men.
Yeah.
A system that was functional for thousands of years. It kept us alive. It was efficient in a certain way, but what used to be romanticized is now politicized, is now weaponized, and it's just killing us. I really think that. Yeah, I mean, I think I look at the women there in that video, and the victimization of women that I see is how they've been stripped of their integrity. They've been stripped of their spirituality. I mean, they've been rendered spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, they have no empathy. They have no honesty. They have no depth of honor or integrity.
No.
They're just
no humanity.
No humanity. All that matters to them is that they maintain the lie.
Yeah.
That men are to step up, man up, and take full responsibility, and the women are the victims, and all the empathy goes to the women. You don't direct any empathy toward men,
no.
And they're just slaves to these kind of patterns.
Right. Yeah. It's their own feeling that this is what they're bound to. This is what this is their deal, right? Is I say that's the part that's not like revolting or insulting. It's scary. It
is scary.
Yeah.
How do you reason with such women? And if women have anything, they've got power. Power is the one thing women do have. And women, the sisterhood in its global temper tantrum, this temper tantrum, this idea that they are the powerless victims in all things. It's grossly unfair. it's all men's fault, and that whips them up into a hostility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a temper tantrum, and it's destroying the social fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this, really sort of very slow motion, um, jihad. I mean, like
Yeah,
mindless holy
yeah,
war.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's like from a certain point of view, I get that, right? I understand the impulse, right? But first, foremost, and always, part of me getting well and becoming reasonable is that,
Uh,
anything that is only an impulse is not to be trusted. It's not to be just
yeah,
accepted at face value. And if I were any of them, right, with the, personality and wiring that I have, I mean, I'd be drunk in an afternoon,
hmm,
and suicidal by nightfall,
yeah,
right? But the point is that because, the social order is set up the way it is, not only can they do it and keep doing it, right? And not only, are they not constrained or admonished, or curtailed because they're celebrated because of it. It's like
yeah,
Vivica Fox has got a free dinner and cocktails from one end of the earth to the other.
yeah. You're so right. I mean, it is so rewarded.
Right.
Female victimization. I remember seeing a series of little amateur plays, and then at the end the judges voted, and the one they voted at the top was this appalling indulgence of these women doing this sort of like weird modern dance, tortured modern dance of their victimization. And
Yeah.
that's what gets that what gets top honors. That gets an
Mhm.
A.
I
And it's
know.
unbelievable. Yeah, that kind of thing. The women are applauded. Look
Yeah.
at the same behavior. Okay, so a man starts complaining that he is the victim of everything, that he
Mhm.
is the put upon innocent victim of everything, and within the world of men, he's just going to get slapped. He's going to be
Yeah.
told, "Quit your bitching.
Yeah.
Quit your fucking bitching." That's what women do. That's not what men do. Stop complaining the way women do. But
Yeah.
then in the world of women, she does this behavior, and then she's so, oh, you're so liberated, you're so courageous,
Right.
you're so what? You're so strong to be up there whining like this and whinging and
Right.
kvetching and my God, dude, this, yeah, they're rewarded as if it were like magnificent behavior.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing the video of that dance presentation. And to be honest with you, as just a way to like process and wring out a person's own, spiritual angst and frustration and everything, I say, to be honest with you, if that's what you got to do, go on and do it. But when you're
Well, I
done,
don't think you saw what I saw, Les, because I saw something, just an amateur theater
yeah,
production of
yeah.
a bunch of little amateur. I doubt you see it because I mean,
Mhm.
probably only 100 people saw it.
Oh, well, maybe not. But I mean,
Yeah,
point is, I've seen things like that,
yeah, I'm sure you've
you
seen things
know.
like it. Yeah,
And like I said, as a means to an end, I don't complain about such things because I've got my own, way that I get through my life. And a lot
well,
of
yeah,
people
I'm
look
not
at
trying to
that and
shut
say,
it down. I'm not trying to tell these
but
women
the
you can't
point
do that or
is,
don't do that.
yeah, the
The
point
point
is to
is that
use it.
they're getting a claim.
Yeah. Don't use it as an end, use it as a means to an
Yeah,
end,
that's right.
that is, for one thing, that is bigger than yourself, right? And for another thing, as you've said way too many times to count, allows you to arrive at a balance. I mean,
Yeah,
these kinds of, displays, right? If that's all there is, then it's no wonder that this group of women, just started browbeating this young man.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, that's what happens. You know,
Their whole psychology is set to do that.
yeah, that's the kind of like spiritual discord that you work your way through and leave behind.
Right.
Never take things like that with you.
But women are infantilized and they don't grow up and they don't mature and they don't take on, well, how often are women obligated for honor? I mean, come on, honor and integrity. I mean, that's what we direct at men. Unfortunately, women are rarely even asked to have honor or integrity. And those women in that video had none.
No, but the woman that was, criticizing the video, it's
she
like
had oodles of
oodles. But not only that, she had to like come by it on her own, right? In the last conversation, I was pointing out because our young lady friend, she was really on fire this time, and I took a moment to point out that not only is she like this just because she is, but she came by it the hard way because nobody was, at least not among her cohort, nobody was supporting her in doing that.
right.
I mean,
right.
She comes and she visits with us, and you've heard me say it in our meetings before. This is something, in the world that ought to be, she should never have to do, right? And yet, she's compelled to, as much as anything else, out of anxiety about her own future. I mean, you and me, we're just about done here, and whatever happens, happens. But she has a very long walk ahead of her.
Yeah, she does.
And it's not right that she should have to, try to, I guess, make these corrections or make these shifts in the culture with such a sense of being alone. It ain't right. And sure, I mean, guys like us can cheer on from the sidelines, and that's probably good. But the fact of the matter is that, she still has a life to live, right? And the woman that put on this video, she, it's just a few minutes out of her life, but what's behind it is probably a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear.
I mean, you got to wonder, I mean, where did she learn what she has learned? How did she mature? So what books did she read? What did she have any mentors around that, or did she figure it all out for herself, or was she just born with it? No, I don't know. Really with it. I mean, she had to cultivate that integrity within herself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my own case, from this side of the coin, I took it on and I started to learn out of it, out of sheer and raw desperation. Now, when I say that, I say it as a man, right? I've got cause to be desperate, but for her, we also have to recognize that it could very well be that, she came to this realization because something terrible happened, right? She might never say so. We might never know.
Yeah.
Right. But it could very well be that she lost something that she cared about more than anything else. And it's like
could be her son, perhaps.
Could be. I mean, we know women like that.
Yeah,
right?
Mothers of sons. Yeah.
So for our side of it, and I take this very seriously. That on the one hand, yes, the women who are supporting us, the concern, at least for me, is that they are very angry. They are really angry, and I don't blame them. But the difficulty is in pointing that anger in the right direction, and having it balanced by reason. For you and I, we've hit a point in our lives where, we don't have a problem being reasonable and, being thoughtful. But sometimes both of us, and especially me, we have a hard time even being passionate, right? We have a hard time being angry because we know what male anger looks like.
Yeah, they're very inhibited about getting angry or showing my anger
Right.
because, right, I know it's going to be judged in the worst way. I know I simply don't have the license. I don't have the power. I don't have
Right.
the permission to get angry, get upset
Yeah.
that a woman would, because my anger will immediately evoke some sense of danger.
Hmm.
If a man is angry, then he might be dangerous and dangerous to women.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be stomped flat real quick.
Right.
You can't afford to be angry.
Right. And like watching that video and how those women on the panel were behaving, I don't think I have to work to get you to admit that it made you angry.
Right, of course. Yeah,
It made me angry too, but because of our position in the world as men, instead of being as aggressive as the woman who made the TikTok is, we do this. And to be honest with you, I think this is what we ought to do, what
yeah,
we're doing right now in this moment, but at
yeah.
the same time, we still have to say to all of these, like, I guess, very determined women, that you're going to have to be the face of my anger as well as your own, because I will never pull it off. Now I say that recognizing, especially in the case of our two young lady friends, it's not entirely fair. you know I mean, how is it that my anger, has to be around their neck? And to that I say, well,
Hmm.
it's not fair, it's not right, and it's not the way it should be, but it is the way it is, and it's either this or nothing. It's either this or we watch it all fall apart.
Yeah. Well, if a man does not go along with the Feminist Party line, if he takes a contrary or alternate position, he is then thrown into the so-called manosphere, and
Yeah.
uh,
And
he is
ends
then
up in
usually
jail in
suspect.
Romania.
Yeah, right. You're judged in the worst way,
Yep.
and the prejudice is enormous. If I'm not gonna go on about women are the victims and men have the power, if I'm going to flip it and take a look at the other half of gender reality, even admitting that it's just the other half, I'm not, saying that it's a more important half. Well, except that it is more important simply because it's the half that's missing.
Yeah.
But not more important, in the big picture. It's just it all balances out, as I like to say.
Right.
But just the same, if I speak that men are also victimized and that women also have power, very immediately suspect, and suspect even of being sane.
Hmm.
There are many who will just call you crazy,
Right. Right.
misogynist. They'll hurl all these insults.
Yeah. Toxic, or uh like psychologically deficient in one way or another.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
have to we have to come off as sane and sensible and reasonable as possible. Just can't afford to
no, no.
give our ideological opponents grist for their mills. So
Right. And really, I'm okay with that. Um,
I am too
I,
at this age.
yeah.
I'm 66. I'm done with raging, and
Yeah.
as you've said before, and I've said the same thing internally. Like the older I get, the less interested I am in somebody's anger,
Right.
including my own.
Right. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If anger was the solution to the problem,
Yeah,
I would back it to the hilt. You,
sure.
you and me sitting here know that's never going to be true. I was having a conversation some time ago about the equalist position, and the balancing of gender politics and gender social order. And I said, you understand, let's at least agree that neither side of this represents more than 50% of the issue, okay, in hard numbers, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, so, imagine a mirror image of what we're trying to deal with now, where women were in the position of constantly having to point out their 50% of the problem, because men have center stage in the victim Olympics. I see, we wouldn't be, we'd be on our knees in a month. It just wouldn't fly, right? And I said the problem with it being the other 50% at center stage all the time, it takes longer for the whole thing to fall apart. It just does. And I said the problem with that is now we're at a place where nobody is still around, who knows how to fix it, right? The people who might have been able to come up with a clever solution are not with us anymore. It's just us now, and
Well, yeah, I mean, in the 1990s, I think she's 100 really well-placed, influential men and women could have brought down the feminist movement if they'd made a really concerted effort, if they'd been dedicated to it, and they were, like I say, really well-placed and wealthy and high status. But now it would probably take over 1,000 to do the same. It's just that much more entrenched.
Right. And, even back there in the 90s, and I suppose probably the 80s,
Yeah.
had they dismantled the feminist oligarchy, they still would have had to replace it with something. And what I've said all along is, yes, they could have done it, but they didn't, because they didn't have an incentive to. They weren't going to get anything out of it. It would have been for the greater good, yeah. And, people like you and I would not be sitting here having this kind of conversation. Yes, that's true. But, they had nothing in front of them saying it's time for, this power structure to be pulled apart and replaced with something better. Now, the kind of people who can do that are just trying to deny the reality that if they don't do something like that now, nobody's going to have anything.
Well, it's
back
terrifying,
there in the
mean,
day when we were younger, nobody was worried about it because there wasn't that much to worry about. Now there is.
It didn't seem like it. They weren't seeing the smoking gun. They weren't seeing where this was all headed.
No.
But now it's becoming more and more clear. But even someone like Elon Musk doesn't have the power to stand up and contradict and basically tell woman, wrong. You are not the powerless victim. Wrong. And here's why. He'd be broken on the wheel.
Yep.
To take like 1,000 well-placed people in solidarity, really working hard to crumble it, and they could because the other half of gender reality is just perfectly demonstrable. So eventually you keep pointing out what the mirror opposite is, and until you just exhaust your feminist opponent. She keeps hurling. Well, what about this victimization of women? Well, what about this power of men? And you just keep flipping right back. Well, here's the mirror opposite of that, and here's the mirror opposite of that.
Right.
You suffer anorexia. Oh, okay. Well, here's the mirror opposite of that. It's boys abusing steroids and human growth hormones. Yeah. Oh, the girls look in the mirror and they think they look fat even when they're emaciated. Well, the boys with muscle dysmorphia look in the mirror and they think they look skinny and weak even when they're huge and bulked up. Yeah. You got nothing. You could just keep doing that for hours and days and weeks.
Yeah, and
eventually you'll show that the feminist perspective's got nothing. I mean, it's just
well, but I'm saying it's the eventual nature of it that, that concerns me more than anything else. Because as you say, we could really go on doing that indefinitely, but we don't have indefinitely,
Yeah.
we just don't. And that, like, what I've always been attracted to in your outlook on it and your viewpoint on it is that rather than, this kind of endless conflict, it's possible, right? And it's preferable, to step back and say, I really don't want to fight like this anymore, because this fight will, it will not end up in victory for anyone,
No.
right?
Yes. No
I
chance
can't
of a
win. I
no
can't
chance
win,
of
and neither
a
can you.
real resolution. No
No,
positive outcomes.
no. That's why I
No.
say I don't want to win anything. I want this over with. And when I say that, I mean it. Because if we don't get to a place where it's over with, like in a very permanent way, you've said it a million times.
Yeah.
There can't be a winner. It's
No.
not possible.
No.
This game is rigged out of that.
Yeah. When it comes to the battle of the sexes, the only win is a draw. There's no other
Exactly.
kind of win.
Exactly. And more than that, it's got to be an amicable, reasonable,
Yeah.
and sustainable draw.
Yeah.
Got to say, I don't want to just stop. A temporary ceasefire ain't going to cut it.
Right.
You know.
No, it requires a deep understanding that it
Right.
actually does all balance out and
Right.
how it all balances out.
Right.
And then it becomes a matter of getting enthusiastic about starting over.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and looking at every gender issue now as a matter of shared responsibility between woman and man as equal partners in the human system, equally responsible for outcomes. And calling it even is not an endpoint; it's a new beginning. It's a place
Yeah.
to start anew in a healthier, a
Right.
rational, more constructive way.
Right. And as you say, a new beginning, um, of a kind, that all the participants have to really take seriously. You know, it, it we really would need to understand, that we have managed, to get to this draw, as you say, this sustainable peace, right? But we have to look at it like we got one last shot. This is one final roll of the dice. Because if we screw it up, if we get to that place and we screw it up again, the one thing about humanity is there's nothing in the universe that guarantees us a seat at the table.
Yeah.
If we go out of the picture, the universe spins on without us like we were never here.
Yep. As George Harrison said, life goes on within us and without us.
Yeah. And it's like I I want to try to cultivate in just people in general, a sense of hope, but also a little anxiety, over how easy it is for us to become complacent, and to take things for granted and to take things as given. One thing I learned in recovery is the utility and versatility of gratitude. If I can be grateful for something, right, then I can keep it in place indefinitely. The very moment that I take it for granted and I stop being grateful, it seems to disappear, and that goes for any good thing or any good person in my life. It's just, that's the way it's always been.
Well, it's been great talking with you, Les.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. And like I say, this is just going to go up as part 2. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of glad that it was just you and I. I really appreciate the time, and look forward to talking to you again next week.
And you, my friend.
All right. Happy New Year.
Yes. Happy 2023.
Hey, we will see. All right. All right, my
All right.
brother. Have a good night.
Take care now.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.